Hi, welcome back to the show. My name's Cathey Armillas, and I'm so honored to be here with my good friend Patrick Galvin. Patrick is the author of The Connector's Way, this amazing book. I've read it myself. He's also the president CEO. He started a firm called the Galvanizing Group back in 2002. Patrick, welcome. Thanks for being on the show
it's great
today.
To be here.
I'm so excited to be talking to you about your book, because I read it when it first came out, and I love books like this. You created this book. It's a business parable,
Yes.
and well, first of all, tell me why you wrote the book.
Well, I love business relationship building, but there are only so many people I could work with. So I wanted to write a book that would help people build better relationships. Now, I started writing a nonfiction handbook. It's never a good sign if 10 pages in you're bored of your own book. I realized that the books I enjoy are business parables, like Patrick Lencioni, Og Mandino, Bob Berg.
Yeah.
And I realized I could teach people about business relationship building through a story. And I'm not a novelist, so actually everything actually happened to me or one of my clients. So they're true stories woven into a continuous narrative. Yes, with a twist. So it's a business guy who's struggling, and through a series of rather fortuitous events, he discovers that there's a much better way to grow his company, and it's through relationships and through some lessons he learns along the way. So I had a lot of fun with it, and there's a lot of stories there.
Oh my gosh, I love, that was the piece that kept me, and these are the kind of books like, you don't set it down until you're done. And I noticed when I went to write my review for you, because I genuinely read it and I loved it and it was amazing, I saw that you have over 150 reviews now, right?
Yeah, 170.
170?
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's very
And I know
exciting.
you've sold over 10,000 copies.
Yeah, this has been a big year for the book. So I wrote a book thinking these are simple lessons, but you know, the funny thing is, there's a lot of shiny objects out there when it comes to marketing and a lot of things that people think they have to do. But if people just focus on relationships, they're going to do great. And a lot of people have gotten away from some very simple lessons that are incredibly powerful if they're put into use.
I totally agree. I think that there was a time, a period, I think it started in the 80s sometimes, where it was like, we have to network, you have to network.
Right.
And again, it's kind of that twist on it, because you talk about everything being a connection, everything being a relationship.
Right. Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit more about that and where the twist off of like networking is.
Yeah, so networking in a lot of people's eyes is something that they don't like because it's kind of smarmy and they're sort of pushing themselves and they're dealing their business cards out there like blackjack dealers.
Right.
And that's the vision that a lot of people have of networking. There's nothing wrong with networking as long as you do it the right way. If you're networking to serve people that you know, whether that's serving them by talking about things in a conversation when you meet them that they're interested in, or whether it's a deeper level where you're really helping them grow their own business. I think that's really where networking is useful, but I don't like the word because it's been polluted with the smarmy business card passing out.
For sure.
Yeah.
The people that do little drive-bys, they try to, they come up and they say, hey, nice to meet you, here's my card, and then, you know.
Right, yeah, I hate that.
Well, I'm so glad, and I know, personally, because you're in my mastermind group, and you know, we're in a professional mastermind group together, where professional speakers are getting together, and we're doing speaker stuff and talking about things that we do professionally. I know that I love to get emails from you. I always feel like you're writing the email directly to me, even if other people are in the group, because you do this really interesting thing where you always add a custom email line. You should tell us about that a little bit.
Custom subject line.
Yeah, sorry, custom subject line on the email.
Yeah, we started as a PR company 15 years ago, and as a PR person, you're competing for the attention of journalists. And most journalists don't open emails if they're from PR companies. So you always have to entice them. It's like offering candy. So I had not left those skills behind me. And it really is thinking about what would be interesting to that person, not what's interesting to me. And that's really, I think, the essence of good relationship building, is putting yourself in the shoes of the other. And in a very mundane thing like an email, like what would they find interesting? How can I grab their attention? How could they feel like this is speaking to me? And that, I think, is an effective email, whether that's a subject line or the content of an email for that matter.
Right. That's awesome. So in the book you have, there's 7 rules, right?
Yes.
If I remember correctly.
Yes.
Tell me about that. Tell me about one of the rules.
Well, my favorite is serve others without consideration of how you're going to benefit. I think there are way too many people out there who are tuned into WIFM, What's in It for Me. That is the radio station that too many people are focused on. But if you go out into the world and you really think, how can I be of service to others? Things come back to you. You know, I don't know if you want to use the term karma. It sounds very touchy-feely. But if you have that mindset of every time you connect with someone, offering something of value to them, whether that person pays you back in the sense of doing business with you or whether they refer you on, you don't know. But as long as you go out consistently with that mindset, all of the great salespeople that I know, all of the most successful folks in their careers, they're people who have that mindset of giving. And it really is kind of a nice thought that good guys and good girls can finish first. And I think a lot of times we think that it has to be trickier than that, but really it's very simple. Serve others, and ultimately you will benefit from it.
So the entire book is based around kind of that premise, which is really, I love that. There was another rule about letting other people be successful, and, right? And helping people become successful. Yeah,
you know, you want to really kind of reach out to them and allow them to grow. So it could be as simple as so many people are trying to create this cool social media presence for themselves. You know, the ultimate Facebook page, the ultimate Pinterest, Instagram, whatever it is. But really, that's cool for them. But I think you can gain so much more traction by going out, for instance, onto LinkedIn and recommending somebody without them asking for it.
Right.
I mean, how do you feel, how does anyone feel when something unsolicited comes in endorsing them, making them feel good? And there's not enough of that going on. So help other people grow and they will want to help you in return.
So yeah, and I love that. So tell me, when you go in and you do a talk
right.
and you're going to a company, how does that work internally? Because some of what you're talking about seems to work well from like company to company or person
right.
to person, but tell me internally, how do you do that with organizations and companies?
Well, people need to serve their colleagues and coworkers. And I think everyone can kind of be scrambling also for their own career advancement. But when you start thinking in a relationship-centric way, it's not only for your external audience, you know, your clients, your prospects, what have you, but when you think, well, how can I be of service to other people on the team? And for instance, going back to this idea of recommending, I mean, you don't have to recommend a client or prospect, you can recommend a team member. And not enough of that's going on in corporate America where people really are lifting each other up. I mean, I think a rising tide will lift a workforce and lift a company up, and a lot of times people are so engaged in their own career advancement that they forget about that.
I love that. I love what you just said, because I've loved that saying.
That metaphor,
Yeah, the whole metaphor of when,
it's a powerful one.
When the tide rises, all boats rise.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people do get a little cutthroat out there. So it's very interesting thought to kind of pull this perspective back a little bit, get it off of the person and get it more onto the organization, and how can we all be successful?
Yes.
And if everybody's doing it, it's like 10 times more powerful, right?
Yeah, and I think once you have enough people engaged in that and that becomes the norm, then that becomes part of a company culture. And I see companies where people are more supportive of one another, and I think it's sort of the butterfly effect within a company.
Yeah.
You know, people start doing this for each other, and then you feel like you need to think along those lines. So I think it can be a very positive thing for businesses. And that's why companies will bring me in, not just to talk to people who are selling the company or their products and services, but also just to work together more cohesively.
Yeah, one thing I know you're good at, Patrick, is you're an influencer. And when you go and speak, I've spoken at conferences that you've spoken at, and people talk about you years later.
Man.
They love you. So the one thing that I know that you help companies with is that big shift is changing a culture. And sometimes that's something sometimes it's really tough to change the way people have thought. You know, sometimes you get into a company and people have worked there 10, 20, 30 years, and they've always had this mindset. So tell me like a good success story where, you know, you've kind of helped the company and making those connections
Well, I believe in Gandhi's statement, you know, be the change that you want to see. And I think there are a lot of great people in corporate America who just need to have their prism changed a little bit. So I've worked in industries that can be very competitive, like the mortgage industry, which is, you know, they have a listing of the top producers and, you know, who's on top of the food chain. And I think a lot of times just the way that industry ranks people can kind of create a sense of competition. But the reality is, you know, they have a brand name out in the marketplace, and if they support their fellow loan officers, well, you know, it's going to be good for the company. So I've gone back to mortgage companies and spoken multiple times because they see that spirit, when it's created, will actually allow people to lift each other up. And it's not just, you know, all about them. It's about how do we make this mortgage company better.
I love it too because I can see the correlation between even within companies, but even personal, business relationships and connecting. That it's short-term vision or short-term strategy versus long-term strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
And short-term is all about me.
Yeah.
It's all about what I can do. It's all about where I can get.
Right.
And the long-term is more like how do I actually make a relationship for life? Whether I mean, even when you leave a company, right? I mean, it's
absolutely.
just everything.
Yeah,
it's
never
just
burn a bridge. That person may work for you. You may work for them again.
I know, that's funny.
You just never know. And I don't advocate a quick fix. So someone that's buying this book saying, "What's the silver bullet for relationship building?" You know what? There's not one.
It's not there.
There's no silver bullet. It's a series of actions. But what is the silver bullet? I think is a commitment to. It's all about the relationship. When you start from there, it'll be different depending on your industry or your personality, the personality of the people you work with, or your clients, your prospects, what have you. But it's a mindset. And once you have a relationship mindset, I think that's really what it takes, and a lot of people just have not been taught that. I went to business school. I studied marketing, advertising. I didn't study relationship building, and I learned that it's all about the relationship, and I wasted lots of money on advertising, on shiny marketing objects, not focused enough on my customer, and that's really what got me into this whole subject of, how do you build a business? Well, it's through relationship, but I failed when I tried to do it through traditional MBA-type activities. It didn't work for me, so I had to shift gears.
I have to put a pin on that. I actually have to say, did you hear what he just said? He said, it's all about relationships. So I love that. And I think if I were to even take everything that we've talked about today, and I mean, I know you and I know what you do.
Right.
I mean, you do it so well, and it really just goes back to that. So let me ask you just one more question.
Sure.
You have another rule in your book. I think it's the last rule, rule number 7. It's be grateful.
Be grateful, yes.
So tell me about that. Tell us.
I don't know if you've experienced this, but when you refer business to somebody and you don't hear from the person who got the referral from you, how do you feel?
Terrible.
It's awful, isn't it? But that happens way too much. So I don't want people to ever think I'm not grateful. So very simple for me, there's 3 things. I want to meet with someone who refers someone to me or who helps me. I want to meet with them face to face. This sort of connection that we have cannot be duplicated. Apple has the Animoji coming out on the iPhone 10. It's like, very cool, but nothing replaces the conversation, the connection. So meet with people, thank them, let them see gratitude, and also the best app on a smartphone is voice.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone more, talk to people. You get a referral, thank them. They can hear gratitude. And you know what? You can also ask questions like, why did you refer that person to me? What makes them a good source for me as a potential client? And then you can actually learn things about that person, things that you would never find out on Google. So being grateful, if you do it in a real world context, can actually provide so much information. It deepens your relationship with the person who made the referral. It gives you more information about the person referred to you, and it really closes that loop. And then I'm a big believer in thank you cards. Personal things. You do it really, really well yourself, is whether you meet face-to-face or on the phone, take the time to send a card.
Yeah.
It's that little stuff. It's the little things. You add up all these little things, and the cumulative effect of having a relationship mindset when you're building a business can be dramatic in terms of results.
Makes big things.
Yeah.
I love that.
Makes big things happen.
Makes big things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, thank you so much.
It was
This
fun.
is your. If I had to sum up everything that you said, it's you're like not only be grateful, thankful, help other people become successful,
absolutely.
and build the relationship. No matter where you're at, no matter what the context is, just build the relationship.
Right. Yeah.
And
just go forth with that attitude, and whatever your goals are, you're going to not only get to them, you're going to surpass them.
Yeah, yeah. So, Patrick, thank you so much for being here
Cathey.
today.
It was fun. I enjoyed it.
I love this. Again, build the relationship. Patrick's book, The Connector's Way. If you haven't read it, check it out. It's on Amazon. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and hope to see you again soon.
Welcome back to our show. I'm Beth Genly, your host for this segment, and this evening I'm really pleased to be interviewing Judy Miller. She is the author of Handspun Hope, making a difference in rural South Africa. And Judy, I'm really glad you're with us today. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
Why South Africa?
You know, I went to South Africa with a group in 1998. And you know how sometimes you go to a country and it's just yours? And South Africa was just mine from the moment I got off the plane. I was so excited, and people were singing and people were dancing. There was this wide, wide, beautiful sky, and I was in love. I barely slept for the 2 weeks I was there. and I got involved helping AIDS orphans. So I stayed involved with South Africa, and in fact I was there in 2001 when I found a lump in my left breast.
Uh-oh.
And so I was driving to get the results of the biopsy, and it was a beautiful spring day. December is spring in South Africa, and I was driving down a country road, and all of a sudden these birds, these tiny koala birds, thousands of them, leaped up, or came up out of the field, and they shocked me. They kind of broke me wide open. And I heard this voice, my voice actually, say, "You will live your purpose." It was intense, and I held on to it. I got my diagnosis, and I went through the treatments. But that voice of "I will live my purpose," I decided that my purpose was in South Africa, where I felt like I could make a difference. So when my hair was just an inch long after the chemo, I took off for South Africa, not really knowing what I was going to do, but with a great idealistic passion that I was going to make a difference somehow.
And what did you find when you got there that really drew you into the village where you stayed and into the culture?
Well, I mean, it was just luck or something, because I was staying in a white world, but I went into a newly opened craft shop, and I looked around, and I do love weaving, and I do have a degree in textile design, although I'd been a yoga teacher. And I saw these weavings, and I said to the woman, where did these come from? She said, well, it's a weaving co-op out in the Black Township, and they're really having trouble. Maybe you could help them. So I said, okay. And I went to meet these women. And at one point, there'd been 30 women weaving there, but there were only 5. They'd been on their own for a while. And I didn't know anything about marketing, and I didn't know anything about South Africa, and 3 out of the 5 women didn't speak English, but I figured, hey, I couldn't do worse than they're doing. So I said, do you want me to help you? And they said yes. So that was before Christmas, and Christmas in South Africa is a big holiday. And so in January, when they started up again, I showed up, and then I spent 14 years with them.
14 years? Mm-hmm. So what happened over the course of that 14 years while you were there?
I learned a lot.
I bet you did.
And they learned a lot. Somehow I managed to keep getting them orders and get them salaries. And one of the first things I realized was there were only these 5 older women there, that we needed a new generation. So I got people from America to sponsor apprentices. So that brought 10 younger women in, which really made the women very excited. So then we had 15, which is a lot to come up with salaries for. But we just started working, and I was so filled with hope, and I was so wanting to help these women, who very substantial women, and they needed help. And so it was a very much a hope-filled journey for all of us.
I gather that hope is now kind of your guiding star, and that you speak about hope a good deal.
I do, because what I learned, both from myself and from the women I worked with, that if you listen to that voice within, and you let your hopes go really wide, and you couple them with action, anything is possible. I mean, I really found that. I mean, it was a ridiculous scene, the idea of this yoga teacher with these 5 rural black women, and when I say rural, I mean when the children saw me, they often cried because they'd never seen a white person before. They'd never seen light eyes before. That I looked like the devil or something to them. So I really was a stranger in a strange land, but we made it work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we really did. And not only was my hope matched, but the women, you know, when you don't have a lot and you are sort of on the edge of survival all the time, you don't spend a lot of time hoping because there's not that much. Anyway, the women started to hope. And Regina, who was the chairperson, a very substantial woman, had been deeply humiliated by her husband years before. He was in Johannesburg, and women weren't allowed to go, and he got himself a new wife, left Regina and her 5 children, and made them move out of their brick house into what they call a mud house. Now, it's not really made out of mud, but it was a very low-level house. And she really wanted a house that she could be proud of. So it was actually my mother who gave her a donation to buy concrete so she could start making bricks. And she started making the bricks for this house that was her dream. And she did it. She got the house of her dreams. I mean, there were many instances like that. There was a young girl who watched her aunt die of AIDS, and she came to me and she just said, I want to be a doctor. My aunt, they didn't treat her well, and I want to start a hospital where they treat people well, but I have to have a better education. Can you help me get a better education?
Oh, my goodness.
And I was in this wonderful position of taking the generosity of Americans to help these very needy women in South Africa. So I wrote to my expanding base and got 6 families who were willing to support this child going through school. And it took 5 years. And she had to work so hard. I mean, she didn't know Afrikaans. She had to work really hard. But she did it. And in fact, just in June, she graduated from college. And she wrote me an email and she just said, I want to help people have hope. So it was sort of a spiraling thing.
I gather there was also some shift in the women's concept of themselves and what kind of power they had, what they were capable of. I believe you had a story about that as well.
Yeah, I do. And, you know, being an American, I'm just feisty, and fighting for them made me even feistier. And so they watched me fight for them. And at the beginning, I had raised money for a roof for their studio, and there was a man up on the roof, and it was a Sunday, and I was there, and Regina, and we're there, and I said, okay, I'm going to leave now. When he's done, check his work and pay him. And both women just looked down, and Regina said to me, I can't be the boss of a man. And I said, but Regina, you are the boss. You're paying him. Anyway, I had to stay and be the boss of the man. And slowly over time that changed until just a couple years ago. Someone called, and we thought it was the lottery and that they were going to get money from the lottery. And they were singing, and they were dancing, and they were praying and thanking God, and they were so excited. And then we got another call, and we realized it was a hoax. So I just picked up the phone and called the guy back and started screaming at him and telling him God would punish him, and you know, just doing what Americans would do. You know, and the women watched me. And the next day I came in, and Gertrude and Regina looked so proud, and they told me they called the man back, and they told him that God would punish him.
Wow, wow, that's a big shift.
Yeah, it is a really big shift. So, yeah. And I learned a tremendous amount, you know. It looks insane the idea of this yoga teacher going to a black community and, you know,
in another
sticking
country
around.
altogether.
Yeah, sticking around. But that whole village changed. You know, people helped the grade school and the nursery school, and people came over and painted. I mean, a lot of energy went into that community, and I think it made a huge, huge difference.
Wow.
Made a huge difference for me.
It sounds like you shifted the entire economy of that village as well as the culture of what was possible. And
I'm
not by
not sure
yourself.
I really changed the economy, but I changed the attitude of a lot of women and girls. And, you know, I feel passionately that if women and girls get more empowered, this world will be a better place.
And with that thought, I'm so moved to hear you talk about hope. I want to thank you for being with us today. And if people want more information about Handspun Hope or about Judy Miller, where can they go for information?
My website, judithbmiller.com.
All right, judithbmiller.com. And I believe you can get more information about the book on Amazon. Thank you for joining us this evening.